Life has a way of making us question our worth, especially when we're constantly overlooked or overshadowed by those we love. In today's story, we dive into a life that has been defined by favoritism, manipulation, and neglect. But sometimes, it takes one moment of realization to reclaim everything that was stolen. Join me as we explore a journey of self-discovery, power, and the courage to walk away from the past. This is a story about finally choosing yourself, no matter the cost. Subscribe now and turn on the bell to start today's story with Life Stories. Let's get started. The air in the room felt thick that morning, heavy in a way that none of us dared to name. It was as if something had shifted, something unspoken but undeniably present. The Christmas tree stood in the corner, flickering with its familiar lights, adorned with ornaments that had been with us for years, tired, somewhat faded, but always there. The fireplace crackled softly, filling the room with warmth, and the scent of cinnamon rolls floated in from the kitchen, adding a touch of comfort. Yet beneath all of this, something felt different. There was a chill, a coldness, that had nothing to do with the weather outside. It was a chill that came from knowing deep down that today, once again, I would be reminded of my place in the family hierarchy. Mom stood by the tree, wearing her red velvet robe. A grin spread across her face as if she had just won the lottery. She had that proud glow, that light in her eyes that she reserved for one person in this house, Olivia. I could feel the weight of her pride before she even spoke. She handed Olivia a small, delicately wrapped box, the gold foil shimmering in the soft glow of the tree lights. Olivia, of course, played her part perfectly. She peeled back the wrapping with exaggerated care, her perfectly manicured nails tearing into the paper with a practiced flourish. I watched her, already anticipating the dramatic reaction that would follow. Her lips began forming an exaggerated, "Oh my God," even before she had seen what was inside. It was as if we were living in one of those cheesy Hallmark movies, where the reactions were always played up for the cameras. And, as expected, when Olivia opened the box, her eyes widened, her entire face lighting up like she had just been handed the keys to the kingdom. In a way, she had been. Inside the box was a simple silver key, nestled in a velvet-lined compartment. It was a key that didn't open a jewelry box or a new car sitting in the driveway. No, this key opened the front door to a house that was now hers. "We bought her a house," Mom announced, her voice trembling with pride, as if Olivia had just discovered the cure for cancer or unearthed the secret to eternal youth. My stomach twisted, a familiar discomfort settling in the pit of my stomach. Dad nodded in solemn agreement, his expression unreadable, but somehow, I could tell that this was a sacred family moment for them. It was like a rite of passage. Olivia, naturally, squealed with excitement, throwing her arms around both of them, her voice rising in a chorus of, "Oh my God. Thank you, thank you, thank you," as if she had just been given a treasure beyond measure. And me? I sat there. My own gift was still in my lap. An envelope, thin and unimpressive, barely worth the effort of wrapping. Dad had handed it to me right after Olivia's grand moment. No applause, no excitement, just a quiet, unceremonious, "Here." I felt my pulse in my ears as I slid my finger under the seal of the envelope, already knowing what it would say. I didn't even need to look at the paper right away. I just sat there, staring at the envelope in my hands. I knew what it meant. I knew what it would say about me. This wasn't just any Christmas morning. This was tradition. A tradition where Olivia received castles, and I got crumbs. A tradition where my place in this family was always in the background, my accomplishments barely acknowledged. And as I unfolded the paper, I felt that old, familiar weight settle onto my chest, the same weight I had carried my entire life. It was the weight of being invisible, the weight of never quite being enough, the weight of knowing that no matter what I did, no matter how hard I worked, I would always come second to Olivia. I could feel the bitterness rising in my throat as I sat there, watching Olivia continue to bask in her moment, her high-pitched voice bubbling with excitement. She clutched the key to her new house like it was the most precious thing in the world. Mom dabbed at her eyes, nodding proudly, and Dad stood beside her, wrapped in the warm glow of their own generosity. "She deserves it," Mom said, her voice trembling with self-congratulation. That was the moment when something inside me snapped. A sharp twist of emotion so strong it almost made me dizzy. It was a moment of clarity, of painful understanding. I wasn't just being overlooked. I was being used. Olivia was the star, the golden child, and I was the one who had always been relegated to the background. The one who was expected to play her part without question. And yet, as I sat there, feeling the weight of that old pain, something inside me began to stir. I could feel the tension in my fingers as I held the thin sheet of paper. I had carried this weight for years. But this year, things were going to be different. This year, I had a plan. I wasn't going to be invisible anymore. As the morning unfolded, I watched Olivia continue to bask in her newfound glory. Her joy a stark contrast to the quiet weight pressing on my chest. I watched as Mom and Dad reveled in the moment. Their eyes fixed on Olivia. Their voices filled with praise and admiration. They never even noticed me sitting there, barely breathing, the sting of their neglect sharp against the backdrop of their enthusiasm. It was always like this. Every family milestone, every celebration, was about Olivia. Everything was centered around her, from the smallest achievements to the grandest gestures. And yet, it was in those small, seemingly insignificant moments that I had always felt the weight of my place in the family. The time I stayed up late on my 9th birthday, baking cupcakes, frosting them with love, thinking that maybe this year things would be different. But when I went downstairs the next morning, there was nothing. No celebration, no balloons, no cake, just the smell of burnt toast and the sound of my mom sipping coffee. Glancing at the clock, checking if Olivia's ballet rehearsal was on time. It was in those moments that I learned my worth was never truly seen. Years later, I spent weeks working on a science project, creating a fully functional hydroelectric dam model that impressed my teachers so much that they encouraged me to enter it into the state competition. The night I won first place, I looked out into the audience, scanning the crowd for a familiar face, for any sign of recognition. But my parents weren't there. My dad had a golf game. Mom had to drive Olivia to a last-minute audition. I remember walking off the stage, my heart pounding, and seeing my mom scroll through her phone, barely acknowledging my victory. She muttered, "Well, at least you're good at something," loud enough for everyone around us to hear. And then came the academic scholarship awards. My name was called, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I had done something big enough to be seen. The applause was deafening. My teachers beamed with pride. But when I looked at my parents, they were absent. Mom wasn't clapping. Dad wasn't smiling. Olivia wasn't even there to support me. I had learned by then that my success was something to be quietly ignored. Only Olivia's success was celebrated. But this Christmas morning, as I held the thin, unimpressive envelope in my lap, something shifted. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was determined. I had already known that Olivia was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in their eyes. But now I was seeing it for what it truly was. I wasn't just neglected. I was being used. This wasn't just about favoritism, it was about manipulation. The realization hit me hard as I unfolded the paper inside the envelope. It wasn't a check. It wasn't a heartfelt note. It was just a piece of paper. A meaningless gesture. I could already feel the weight of what it meant. It wasn't about the gift. It wasn't about me. It was about maintaining the carefully constructed family narrative where Olivia shone and I remained in the shadows. But as I stared at the paper, I felt something stirring within me. Something I hadn't felt before. It was the flicker of power, of choice. I had always been the responsible one, the dependable one, the one who could be relied upon but never celebrated. But now, for the first time in my life, I realized that I wasn't invisible. I wasn't a background character. I had the power to change everything. I didn't fully understand it then. But as I sat there, clutching that piece of paper, I knew that this was the moment. This was where everything would shift. I wasn't going to let this family dictate my worth any longer. I was done being the quiet one in the background. I was going to take control. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about making them regret how they treated me. It was about reclaiming my own power. I had a plan. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to be invisible anymore. The discovery that I had power, the power to change everything, was both liberating and terrifying. It was the kind of realization that settles deep into your bones, making you question everything you had ever known. My entire life, I had been the quiet one, the one who always followed the rules, the one who never asked for more. I had convinced myself that it didn't matter, that maybe I was being too sensitive. But this Christmas, something inside me snapped. I wasn't just going to sit there and take it anymore. For weeks, I carefully planned my next move. I wasn't going to confront them with anger. That wasn't the way to win. No, I was going to do this quietly, deliberately. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me angry, seeing me hurt. Instead, I would take control of my life in a way they never expected. I would make them see me, not by fighting back, but by removing myself from their grasp entirely. The house, the lake house they had been obsessing over for years, became my prize. They never thought it would come to this. They never thought I would be the one to make the final move. And yet, the thought of owning it filled me with a sense of peace I had never known before. It wasn't about the property itself, it was about taking back what had always been mine. What they had always kept hidden from me. I wasn't just buying a house. I was buying freedom. When Christmas morning arrived, I was ready. The family gathered around the tree. And as usual, Olivia was the center of attention. Mom gave her a designer handbag, the kind that made her eyes light up with excitement. Dad beamed with pride, as always, his eyes fixed on Olivia, showering her with admiration. But this time, I wasn't going to sit in the background. I had my moment too. I handed my father a small, unremarkable white box. No ribbon, no decorations, just clean, sharp edges, the weight of something much heavier than they could have anticipated. He chuckled and shook the box, making a joke about it possibly being socks. But I just smiled and told him to open it. Inside was an envelope, a thick, ivory-colored one, with an embossed seal pressed neatly across the flap. My father's laughter faltered as he unfolded the papers inside, his eyes scanning the first few lines. I could see his face shift from amusement to confusion, then realization, and finally panic. His breath hitched, and his fingers tightened around the paper. My mother leaned over his shoulder, her expression narrowing as she read the documents. "Wait, what is this?" Olivia asked, still oblivious to what was happening. She looked between us, waiting for someone to explain, waiting for reassurance from our parents that this was all just a misunderstanding. But no one spoke. The silence in the room was deafening. Finally, my father inhaled sharply, his face paling. "This isn't possible," he muttered, his voice shaky as he flipped through the papers. "The bank, this can't be." But I interrupted him, my voice calm and steady. "No, it's not a mistake," I said, letting the weight of my words settle in. "I own the lake house now." The shock in their eyes was palpable. Mom's face drained of color, and Olivia's confusion deepened. She laughed nervously, clearly not understanding the gravity of the situation. "What do you mean you own the lake house?" she asked, her voice rising in disbelief. I leaned forward, my eyes fixed on my father. "The house was never yours to begin with," I said quietly. "Not legally, and now, it definitely isn't yours." The room went silent, my mother's face hardened, and Olivia's expression faltered for the first time, her facade cracking. Dad's first instinct was to deny it, to try to talk his way out of it. He slammed the papers down onto the table, his voice rising in anger. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he demanded. "Do you know what that house meant to this family? The family you've been using my name for?" I shot back, my voice cold and cutting. "The family that forged my signature to make sure I stayed in the background while you focused on Olivia? That family?" My mother flinched, her eyes widening. But it wasn't guilt I saw in them. It was fear. Fear that they had lost control. Fear that I had finally seen through their facade and had taken away the one thing they thought they could always count on, my silence. "Why would you do this?" my father asked, his voice strained, his eyes desperately searching for an explanation. "Why go behind our backs like this?" I didn't respond immediately. I just sat there, watching them, feeling a sense of satisfaction that I couldn't put into words. They had spent my entire life treating me like I didn't matter. Like I was invisible. And now I had taken control. I wasn't just taking the house, I was taking back my life. My power. My freedom. And as they sat there, helpless, I finally realized that I wasn't doing this to punish them. I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing this for me. As I stood there, watching the realization sink into their faces, something shifted within me. It wasn't the satisfaction of revenge, or the thrill of having one-upped them, it was peace. For the first time in my life, I felt as though I had finally freed myself from their expectations. From their favoritism. From the suffocating control they had tried to impose on me. The house was mine now. But it wasn't just about property, it was about reclaiming myself. Olivia's voice snapped me out of my thoughts. Her sharp words cutting through the silence. "This isn't fair," she protested, as if somehow she were the victim. But I didn't flinch. I had spent too long feeling small. Too long chasing approval that would never come. Their world, where Olivia was the center and I was the background, no longer had any hold on me. Mom reached out for me, her voice soft and coaxing. But I pulled away. I wasn't the same person I had been. I had stopped waiting for their validation. Stopped hoping for their love. The silence that followed felt like freedom. As I walked out of that house, I wasn't walking away from something, I was walking towards something. I wasn't leaving behind a family that had never truly seen me. I was embracing the life I had built. Free from their manipulation and control. The lake house became my sanctuary. A symbol of everything I had reclaimed for myself. I didn't look back as I closed the door behind me. I didn't need to, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't walking away from something, I was walking toward everything I had always deserved. Subscribe now and turn on the bell so you never miss a story. Let's get started.